Okay, last time we got together, we talked about the founding of the New England colonies. Today, we are going to talk about Quakers and Catholics and Jews. Oh my! Yes, the settling of the middle colonies. Now, sometimes we refer to these middle colonies as the mid-Atlantic colonies. And you can see how these two words will be synonymous as we go through the rest of this course. So please remember that Mid-Atlantic means the middle colonies. There are 4 middle colonies that you have to be able to identify and recognize on a map. From north to south, let's start with New York. South of New York, we have Pennsylvania. To the east of Pennsylvania, we have New Jersey. And the one that many people forget about is Delaware. Hey! Let's start with a brief rundown of how these colonies developed. You will notice that the Dutch established New Netherland in 1621 as a trading colony. The Dutch, who settled along the Hudson River and the Delaware River, had aspirations of gaining wealth by trading with the Indians. You see, the Dutch had seen what the Spanish had been doing for 100 years in the New World. The Dutch had seen what the French had been doing in the New World for the last 100 years. And now they had seen England getting involved. And so the Dutch believed they needed a piece of this trade action. Well, the problem for the Dutch was there weren't enough people in the Netherlands to come over and man up and take part in this trading colony. And so the Dutch king realized his solution was to open up trade for everybody else. So he opens up for migration from Germans, from French, from Scandinavians, and yes, even from free Africans. Now, it didn't matter where you came from. You could come to the New Netherlands, set up a trading post, treat the Indians fairly, and you could have an opportunity at a better life. And so this diversity that arrived in New Netherlands, again, along the Hudson River and along the Delaware River, is going to help make New Netherlands a profitable colony. Of course, when you have that many people from different places with different traditions and different languages living in the same place, that much diversity means we better get along. After all, it's far easier to make money if we are cooperating and accepting each other than it is if we are fighting each other. And so from this diversity, we get a great amount of what we would call religious toleration. Religious toleration. And that's going to bring many types of Protestants to New Netherlands. Protestants of all different types. We are going to be open to Catholics. Even Jews and a small community of Muslims are going to arrive in New Netherlands. Now let's take a look at what this is going to look like here on the map. Over in the eastern portions, that is, east of the, forgot the pen, east of the Appalachian Mountains, we have, hopefully you remember, this is where the French settled. So the Frenchies are hanging out over here. Further south, that is south of the French, we have the Spanish. Oh, let's spell it right here, people. Spain. Okay, so Spain are hanging out here, and France is up here. Now, we've also learned that the British are here, coming on down, and up in here, going on up. Let's go ahead and try to label them as well. We'll call this Great Britain, right there, and up here, same deal, Great Britain is up here. Now, right here in between the British is this little thing that we're going to call the Dutch wedge. That's what the King of England called this, the Dutch wedge. And there it is, right there, separating the British colonies from each other. This is going to become very, very annoying to the British. And let's write the Dutch here. And this is going to cause a serious problem, and eventually the British are going to take some matters into their own hands to remove the Dutch from this area. So as England began to get a little pushy, the guy that we have to associate with this is this cat right up here. His name, there he is. His name is the Duke of York. In 1664, the Duke of York, the heir to the kingdom, convinces his king that he can push the Dutch out of New Netherlands, finally gaining permission under the auspices that, hey, the Duke of York, you better take your own people and put them on your own ship, but you can carry the British flag. The Duke of York shows up in the Hudson River and quite easily ousts the Dutch rule. And then the Duke of York changes the colony's name from New Netherlands to, wow, could it be that easy? Yeah, it is. The Duke of York changes his colony from New Netherlands to New York. Later on, the Duke of York is going to give a couple of his buddies over in England the colonies of New Jersey and parts of what is now modern-day Delaware. It'd be important to note right here, because there were so many different kinds of people already in this colony, the Duke of York was more interested in making a profit rather than forcing his will on anybody. So he said, hey, look, anybody who's already here, the Dutch, the Germans, the French, the Scandinavians, yeah, even those free Africans, if you're already here, you can stay. No problem, you won't be bothered, as long as you first pay your taxes, second, pay your rent, and don't act like a fool. And then there was William Penn. William Penn was a little bit of an oddball. Now, if this guy looks familiar, and I hope he does, you've probably seen somebody who looks a lot like this on the Quaker oatmeal box. It's not a coincidence. William Penn wants a safe place for the Quakers. Now, William Penn is a member of a church that is called the Society of Friends. And the Society of Friends were targets of a great deal of discrimination over in England. You see, they believed in some rather bizarre ideas for the time. For example, they were pacifists. That is to say, they did not believe in fighting. They believed in equality of all people, and they treated each other as though they were equals. And this is a problem for British society when the Society of Friends would call them names like friend and brother and sister. And this is going to dictate the idea that they don't see any station in life. They don't believe anybody is better than anyone else. And so with these ideas, even allowing women to take part in religious ceremonies, where they stand up and give testimony, these are all ideas that the rest of English society is not going to be very happy with. So William Penn and the Quakers, the nickname for the Society of Friends, were greatly discriminated against. Now there's a little problem with the Society of Friends and William Penn especially. That is to say, William Penn, he was rich. And the king owed William Penn a whole bunch of money. Well, the king didn't like the idea that he owed this silly Quaker a lot of money. And so the king came up with an idea. It was King Charles, see if I can get him up here, King Charles II in 1681 granted William Penn a large amount of land in the western portion, just west of where the New Netherlands had been, and away from where King Charles, the Duke of York, had already claimed a colony. Well, what William Penn realized is that he needed access to this river. He needed access to the Delaware River. And so William Penn actually ends up purchasing this thin piece of land right here so that his colonists would have access, as well as parts of Delaware, so that they could trade with the Indians and then export the products that they got. Pennsylvania is going to become a place of tolerance. It's going to be based on those Quaker beliefs of equality, of treating people fairly, of not being too pushy, of respecting other people regardless of their race, of their nationality, or of their religion. And so Pennsylvania becomes a colony of very forward thinkers. This is going to be the only colony that we have established in the New World, that is the only British colony, where we actually have peace with the Indians. William Penn believed that every single dealing with the Native Americans was law, and therefore it was to be respected. William Penn did not place his people above anybody else. So what we're going to find here with William Penn and the rest of the middle colonies is economic opportunity as well as religious freedom were going to be the primary motivations for settling in the middle colonies. This economic opportunity is going to be afforded to everyone, and that's going to help bring about the concepts of religious freedom. That is complete tolerance of people of different religions. You don't have the animosity that the Puritans had towards dissenters. There was no dissent. You were allowed to do what you wanted to do, and the middle colonies were the place to go if you were perhaps a little bit different. Now I'd like to draw your attention again down here to this image right here. And here we see William Penn working with the Native Americans. William Penn was a fair trader, respected all the treaties that they signed, and Pennsylvania is going to become quite literally the only colony that we have that never had a war with the Indians. So lessons that we can deduce from the founding of Pennsylvania. Because of the great deal of diversity, the middle colonies, especially Pennsylvania, sort of becomes what we would refer to as the ideal goal of where the United States would eventually want to get. They believed in things like tolerance and practiced them. They believed in things like equality and practiced it. They believed in representative government and practiced it. So this is going to be the forward thinking, leading the way to where we want to get as a nation.